Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Failed Breakdown channel. Got Mayank with me here again today. We're going to be discussing just one trade today, the 68.43 failed breakdown of the overnight low that triggered around 11 a.m. Eastern time. There have been a couple of other setups, but we're really going to focus on this one just to try and keep the video short. And obviously, that's been the main trade of the day. Fairly textbook failed breakdown, so a good one to study. As ever, we're just doing our best to relay the method taught by Adam Mancini. Neither of us are affiliated with him, so sign up to his newsletter for the full breakdown of the trade that we'll get later on. We're recording this about 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time, so just an hour before the close or so. All right, so let's bring in a chart here. I've just marked up a 5 minute chart. So I actually got this set in replay mode, so it's not moving around all over the place. But um, the transition to the kind of blue zone here, the light blue zone, is right about the time I'm waking up and getting on charts. And obviously, the first thing we notice is prices sold off pretty massively overnight, but put in a major low here at 67.43 ish, 67.42.75. So we set a big overnight low that's lifted about 58 points. So very clear and obvious overnight low. I've kind of marked that as a grade A significant low that if we flush and recover, that we can trade the failed breakdown of later on. So that's the first point to note. Mark that level on the chart. It wasn't part of the newsletter planned entries, but it's clear and obvious. And then the second thing to note, really, we had a major level here at 68.02 to '08, which was really the lows, the RTH lows from yesterday that we launched off of. Failed back through overnight, and then in the London session just before the pre-market, we rejected those levels and headed lower. So that's setting us up for a potential flush and recovery of the 67.43. So that's kind of the state of the play coming into the market. The transition between these two light zones is market open here, and right off the open we were in the phase of kind of recovering the 67.68 level, and there was a level to level trade in here. I think a number of us took that one, but it was very, very choppy. And so the main point to note there again is we failed to recover, or failed to make a higher high, and failed to recover the 68.02 to '08 level, and then started a sell off after the open as we approached our level. So the sell-off to me was quite choppy, and you kind of see that just this, again, 5 minute chart, but after the initial 10-15 minutes, a bit of a push down, we just start getting 5 minute bars stacking side by side as we're starting to watch for a flush and recovery of the 67.43 level. And we did put in a micro flush. So we can draw the danger zone on a little bit ahead of a time. That's what this red box is, 5 point danger zone. And the first point there was to look to see if we're going to recover above and hold above that danger zone for a couple of minutes. You were watching that one closely, Mayank. How did you see the attempted recovery at this point, and kind of the sell off into it?
Yeah, so because, like you said, it was a pretty shallow flush. I was basically intent on waiting for the danger zone to clear and hold above for a couple minutes. And I think that really is the key is you didn't really hold above for more than a minute at a time. You could kind of clearly see from about, especially that 15-minute period from 10 to 10:15, price really, and if you were watching in real time, you kind of get a glimpse that it kept pushing up above the danger zone, but it wasn't really able to hold it for honestly more than a minute and a half max. It just kind of kept coming back down. So that's kind of one of those signs. I know we've kind of talked about the different variations of NAP, but that's kind of one of those signs where if you're not really able to see a firm push up and hold above that danger zone, then you got to be a bit cautious. Remember, it's not just about seeing us go 5 points and longing, but it's about making sure that it's also holding for a couple minutes and that price is really strong to not come back and test the lows. So, I was seeing that over the course of a few minutes, and that kind of gave me quite a bit of cause to pause there. But if we were able to hold it for a couple of minutes, I was open to obviously taking it. Just to me, we got close a couple of times, but ultimately nothing long enough for me to trigger an entry there. So, another thing as well is when we're in a volatile environment like this, you got to make sure that the speed of the tape doesn't speed up your own process. So just because the tape and price is moving faster, doesn't mean that you need to, speed up your process into rushing and doing things that you normally wouldn't do. So just kind of stick to the process. Let price play out. If you end up getting in a little higher because price runs, it's okay. But yeah, once we then lost the 43, that turns on the sell algo, and I had no plan for anything below there. So the whole day entirely for me was just going to be, does the 43 failed breakdown trigger at any point? If not, nothing to do. But if it does, then I'd be happy to come take it.
Yeah, I've just dropped to 2 minute chart on this one so we can see it clearly. Try and drag this over. Never mind. And yeah, you can see it's just not holding above the danger zone there, falls back into it and just chopping sideways, and then we get the deeper flush to continue downwards, and kind of from the top here, before we break through the level to the flush low, we sell about 28 points in 10 minutes. So just about 3 points a minute. Pretty scary flush there, enticing a lot of people to short below the level. And so we know then that, with all this sort of inducement, if we do get above, there's going to be a lot of people covering, and that's what we're looking for. So we've got a good solid trap. The flush has gone 24 points below the level, and then we start the process of accepting and reclaiming. And given that we've gone 24 points, so this is kind of in the deeper category of flush depth, we know that the acceptance, the process of acceptance is going to take probably more than 10 minutes. It's going to be in that 10-minute to hour range, just as a rough guide. And you can just use that to be patient. If you're getting in on the first poke through the level after a 24-point flush, we're probably jumping the gun a bit. It is a process of acceptance, not just an instant snap back. And that's what we get here. So it's type 1 acceptance. We return to the level from below. And there's kind of one major swing, and then within that several sort of fractals. So there's one major swing that dips about 17 points, but within that you get kind of 3 or 4 return to the level and dip. This is, again, I've reduced this to a 2-minute chart. So we initially return, dip, poke up just through, dip again, poke up just through, dip again, and then one last time, and then, but the key point here is we don't make a lower low. We don't even really threaten the low at all. So clear type 1 acceptance. We know then if we push up through the level with momentum, that's an obvious trigger for entry, and that's exactly what we got. We pushed up, held a little bit at the level there, but given the acceptance was so clear, as soon as we start to lift off the level, you can take your long entry. So pretty straightforward. Anything you wanted to add on the acceptance side of things here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the acceptance here was pretty clear, the type one. So, I personally didn't use any entry above the danger zone or NAP here. Yeah, we had essentially from 10:30 to 10:45, about 15 minutes there. We just kept, poking right at 43, rejecting, poking right at 3 and rejecting. So overall, you had a nice kind of 15-minute period there of acceptance that, I really ended up liking. So at that point, all you're really looking for now is just let's get above 43 with a little bit of momentum and push. And I think that kind of comes back to what we've mentioned here recently, which is I just kind of identifying that relationship between price and momentum. And so, around just a little bit before 11, you start really seeing that push nicely above 43 with some momentum. And at that point, you can just kind of long it wherever. So I ended up taking it around 46. And then, yeah, obviously now we've had a pretty insane rally from that point.